Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show here on the Delta Report. Today is Friday, the 11th of March, 2022. Glad to have you guys here. Here's what I want to talk about. Today's show's for preppers. And what I'm going to talk about is something that's not real common knowledge amongst preppers out there. On the average, preppers, a lot of times you might be homesteaders. You might be out there and be self-sufficient pretty much uh, from power outages. You might have a solar system set up, and you might have a small farm, and it might be kind of independent. Maybe you got some goats or some chickens or something like that on your small farm. Maybe you got some stuff put away from yourself. I'm going to talk about energy sources that are not solar. The solar is not always reliable. Sometimes might get dark, dreary weather. What if we get a nuclear winter? How are you going to produce solar then? Right? I'm going to talk about two things that are not common knowledge for a lot of people. Do you know, during World War II, they had, throughout Europe, they had tremendous fuel shortages. You couldn't get fuel. You just couldn't get it. There's something that not a lot of people know about, and I'm going to tell you about right now. A gasoline engine, like in your car, or at least in the older cars, especially the cars that had carburetors, or the old simplified fuel injection, I guess the earlier models, fuel injection. They have a throttle body. Though all those cars can be run off of wood. Excuse me. Probably not a lot of you homesteaders out there and you preppers out there didn't know that you can actually drive your car on wood. Now think about it this way. Say we're in an apocalyptic world. Say we've entered into a Mad Max world. There's no fuel anywhere. And you have to get out of there because, say, you're a little bit too close to a nuclear power plant. Okay? And say the nuclear power plant melts down during the apocalypse. And you're only 30 miles away. And you got to get the heck out of Dodge. So your homestead and everything else you got there, is like being covered with radiation, ionizing radiation, and you got to get the hell out of there. So you want to pack up your things, but you go to your car or out to your truck. Say you got a pickup truck, great little pickup truck, but you got no fuel, and all the gas stations are closed because you're in the apocalypse. So you got to get at least 100 miles away or 200 miles away, and you want to take some of your possessions with you. So you want to take your truck. You get your truck and it's empty because you've used up the last of your fuel because the gas stations have been closed for 2 months. What are you going to do? How are you going to get out of there? Are you going to walk? You're covered with radiation trying to walk out of there and only get 5 miles a day trying to carry what's on your back? No. You want to take your pickup truck. So how are you going to do that? Okay? It will run on you see those broken limbs in the woods of your place, and maybe you got a little bit of firewood or it'll run on that wood. How it does it is, you don't put the wood directly into the gas tank or anything like that. What you got to do is you got to make a system. How the system works, basically, it has a pre-burner. It burns the wood. It's like a wood stove, sort of a thing, The wood gets burning. And there's a gas that comes off of that wood. It's uncombusted gas that comes off of that wood. Through a system of pipes, it can go down either the throttle body or the carburetor on your car and be combusted. Now, I'm going to tell you what. When I was a younger man, I think I was 19 years old, I had a big Dodge car with a 440 cubic inch V8 engine in it. And I built a carburetor. That old car had a carburetor on it. It was a 1978 model car. It still had carburation back then. I built a carburetor, took the carburetor off that was on the car, and took my carburetor that I built and put it on the car. Okay? The gas mileage that the old carburetor would give was around 14 miles to the gallon. My carburetor is doing over 30 miles to the gallon. And the exhaust was so pure you couldn't even smell it coming out the tailpipe. It would have poisoned you if you tried. I mean, I wasn't trying to smell it. I was like, standing up behind, looking. I put my hand down over the exhaust, and you can see it was totally clear. It wasn't any unburnt carbons in it when it come out because of the carburetor that I built. So I built a second one for my dad's pickup truck. And it was an old F2, I think it was an F250 or F350 pickup truck, Similar gas mileage to the big V8, 440 V8. I built a second carburetor for that. And it had a lot of hoses and stuff on it, the carburetor I built. Had propane valves and propane hoses and stuff, but it wasn't propane that I was running on. I was running on gasoline, but it was a type of carburetor that I built that took the gasoline, and instead of burning it as a liquid or liquefying it, it was taking the gasoline and turning it into not even a vapor, but in its purest form of being totally gasified, the gasoline, and then the car was burning that. Now, in my car, I never burnt the valves. But in my dad's truck, when I put that carburetor in there, because he had the old soft valves, I think it was a 1973 model pickup truck, the valves were made for leaded gasoline. My carburetor did two things. 1,000 miles, it drove 1,000 miles before it burned all of his valves because it ran the engine so hot, the carburetor. But in a modern car, it wouldn't do that because they put hardened valves in now. But it burned his valves in this engine, my carburetor did. But the second thing it did, it nearly blew the truck up. What happened was we were going down the road. And by the way, it got twice the gas mileage. From the carburetor that I built, it got twice the gas mileage, the truck did, of what it normally got with a regular carburetor. Double the gas mileage. I think it was 28 miles to the gallon he was getting. And a big old V8 pickup truck. It was a gas guzzler. Anyway, the story is, we were driving down the highway with that truck and we didn't know it. But the gas mileage dropped off a little bit. We didn't know why. What was happening is that gas in its purest form, which is gasified gas, was leaking out through a hose, burned a hole in the hose because of the heat from the carburetor I built. Burn a hole in the hose. And it was leaking out into the engine compartment of the truck. We were driving along, didn't know that. Any spark, that thing would have blew. It would have blew like I wouldn't be here right now. Let's just put it that way. If any spark had come along. Luckily, there's no point of ignition. So I scrapped the entire carburetor projects after that because I considered it too dangerous after that accident happened with the truck. But I also burned his valves out in this truck. We had to do a valve job on the truck. Anyway, that's a long time ago when I was a young man, and I was only about 19, I guess, 18, 19 years old. And I was just learning about things like that. So anyway, what I was saying is cars will run off of the vapors off of a fire, off of a wood fire. Now, can you imagine a car where you say, "Oh, we're out of fuel," the car will clunk, clunk, clunk to the side of the road, right? Just a minute, let me go into the woods and let me grab some sticks and some old limbs off of these trees here that are on the ground. You gather up a big armful of that stuff. You say, this should get us 5 or 10 more miles. Quite seriously. And this happened during the World War II. They converted their cars over into wood-burning cars. And it works rather well. You can burn anything that's wood. You can stop at a construction site and pick up all those little pieces of 2x4s at the carpenters, and you can put them in the trunk, and that's enough to get you 300-400 miles. A trunk full of that stuff. But it's a little bit of an apparatus. It's got pipes and hoses on it and everything else, and you got to light the fire first before you can start the engine. You got to get the fire burning up pretty good, and then you got to switch the valves over and then start your engine on that, and your engine will run on it. A lot of people don't know that. Now I'm going to tell you the second thing for you homesteaders out there. You want power for your house? Think old technology. Think steam engine. You can quite literally take a Briggs & Stratton engine that runs on gasoline. Your lawnmower engine. You can take your lawnmower engine, and you got to take the, I can't think of the name of the thingamajiggy inside the engine that controls the valves. What's the name of it? It has lobes on it that open and close the valves inside the engine. You got to take that out of the Briggs & Stratton engine, the lawnmower engine. What you got to do is you got to change the positioning of the lobes so that the valve opening is changed. And then, through the spark plug intake, you can quite literally put your in line from your steam tank. So you got a tank that holds the water. Okay, it's basically what's called a boiler. That's called the boiler. It's a big tank. I'm not sure, but what you can use for a tank for that, maybe an old hot water heater or something like that. I'm just not exactly sure. But one word of advice is, if you do on your steam boiler tank, you got to have a check valve on there, or the thing will blow up. It'll overpressure. You need a pressure gauge, and you need a check valve, and then you need a burner box. Basically, the burner box is just like a wooden fireplace that goes underneath the boiler tank. And the flames go right up underneath the boiler tank, and they heat that water that's inside the boiler tank. And it builds up pressure. Then that pressure goes in the top of your Briggs & Stratton motor, that steam pressure. Of course, you got valves on there. And it goes down inside that piston, and it actuates the piston inside the Briggs & Stratton motor, and it goes chuk, 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 chuk. You hook a flywheel up to that, hook a fan belt up to a number of things you can hook on the other side of that. You can hook a car alternator. Car alternators are good. They'll produce you 12 volts, probably 60 amps. Charges a bank of batteries. So what's your fuel source? You got your house then running on electricity. Okay? And it's not reliant upon cloudy days. You got electrical power then. And what's it reliant upon? Sticks and twigs that are in the forest, or an old deadfall tree. You can break that up and throw it into the burner, and you can heat your house. Not heat your house, but you can have lights in your house for a week off of an old tree that fell down in the woods. It's just going to rot into the ground anyway. You might as well have the electricity from it. Now, I'm talking about if we go into a crazy world where we're in a post-apocalyptic world. It'd be nice to have lights and stuff, right? And this is an alternative source to solar. Why throw that old lawnmower away? That just because it's lost its compression, or maybe maybe some of the parts on it are broke. Maybe it's still got good compression, but maybe they're just the old lawnmower. You bought a new one because the handle broke or something, or maybe a wheel broke off of it or something. You buy a new one. You can unbolt that engine, And by changing the lobes on that little thing, the timing, I can't think of the name of it, but just by changing those lobes so the valve opening is different, and there's all kinds of videos on YouTube that tell you exactly how to do that, and they show how to do it, because guys are doing that. But what I'm pointing out in my show is not so much how to do it, is pointing out to you guys that there's alternatives. And some of these alternatives to energy are things that they gave up on back in the turn of the Industrial Revolution, when they had all the steam engines, and then they had such cheap, free, easy oil was available to them. You know, they refined the oil into gasoline, and gasoline is better. So they went with that, and they just dropped off with all the steam engines and stuff. But, you know, steam engines are something that'll actually run on environmentally. They can use up all that garbage wood that maybe you got a big piece of land. You know, maybe you got trees that's fell down and stuff and old lumber everywhere. You could just heaped in piles. You might want to get rid of it even. You can turn it into usable energy to drive your car. With these two methods, you can drive your car. You can and you can power your house. And it's just you just need some very simple skills, like being able to hook up a few copper pipes and coils and stuff like that. You know, a few simple skills that most men have, and a little bit of know-how, and you can get the information off of YouTube. So I just want to let you guys know about that there are alternatives to solar, and there are alternatives to wind as well, because wind and solar are something you can't really rely upon them all the time. Solar's a little bit more reliable than wind, but you know, you might put up a wind tower or something, and you might be waiting for a week and there's no wind. Or with solar, you might go through a nuclear winter and there won't be any sun for a while, you know, and how are you going to get power then? And the old steam engine, it'll run regardless. Oh, you need some old crappy wood someplace, wherever you can find it. Bye-bye, guys.